Hello, listeners. It is the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Hello, listeners. We are back with another episode of the preview show, and I am joined this week by our regular Statman Dave, our regular panelist and resident FPL expert Adam Dennett, and we are delighted to be joined this week by Si from the Cardiff C world, who's going to be joining us for our opposition view. Si, welcome to the No Nay Never podcast. We are delighted to have you.
No, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
No problem at all. Do you want to just kick us off with a little bit of detail of who you are and how our listeners can get in touch with you should they need to?
So basically, I host and own Ace Podcast Nation, which is the parent company of Cardiff City World, which is the Cardiff City fan channel. It's fairly new, the fan channel, but it's kind of moving along quite quickly as it goes, because Cardiff was well overdue a fan channel, which was really weird, like a capital city of Wales, and we didn't have like an out-and-out fan channel. So that's been good, and it's going really well. And Ace Podcast Nation just does a whole host of different things, from like live events and also just podcasts and stuff with various people and different subjects and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
Excellent stuff. So we're going to be talking to Si this week all about his expectations for the season, the pressure, if any, that his manager is under, what the state of Cardiff City is, and what he thinks about this weekend's game. Adam, welcome back. We missed you last week. Where were you? You disappeared.
I went to Hotel Football Old Trafford with my wife and kids, and spent a weekend in Manchester trying to make sure my 3 girls stayed Clarets. I think I've just about managed it.
Well done. We would have kicked you out of the podcast if we did that. Now, listeners, before you start this week's podcast, what are you doing? Have you subscribed? Have you turned on notifications? Have you commented in our sections? If you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening to this on our podcast, please hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider. You do not want to miss a single second of content this season. So what are you waiting for? Do it now. Right, let's get going. Si, we're going to come to you first with a couple of questions. And Dave is going to kick us off with a couple of stats ahead of this weekend's game, please. What nuggets do you have for us, young Dave?
A couple of stats before we kick off. Despite home advantage, Burnley failed to win any of the first 5 meetings between the two teams at Turf Moor. We lost 3 and drew 2, and all those matches were back in the 1920s. And the second stat I've got for you for this point, Cardiff City have come away without a win in their last 16 visits to Turf Moor, with these matches being played at all 4 levels of the Football League. However, precisely half of those games have ended as draws. Looking slightly further back, the Bluebirds have managed just 3 wins in 27 attempts at Turf Moor since 1960.
I like those stats, Si. Let's start with you. Last season, obviously you finished comfortably mid-table in the Championship. You did have a little bit of a push to try and get into those playoffs, but nowhere near relegation threatened. And it felt like there was some stability at the club. A young squad. You come into this season hoping to start making a push for the playoffs. I think start us off by talking about last season. Was it a disappointment? Was it a relief in the end? How did you feel coming at the end of last season and coming into this one?
Yeah, last season was strange because we started off the season really, really well. We picked up some wins against some big sides, and then we got a couple of big injuries, and it kind of, from around just before Christmas, kind of got not so great, and then we really had a rocky spell. And then we picked up a little bit towards the end of the season, but we definitely got to a point where we were kind of safe, but probably weren't going to make the playoffs either. And it seemed to sort of fizzle out into a bit of a kind of almost like a nothing month or so at the end of the season. But ultimately, I think overall, we were happy to just be stable, not be in the relegation conversation. And like you say, add that bit of stability from the new manager. And he brought in some good players. Unfortunately, because of the transfer embargo, the majority of the players that we had brought in the summer were all loans and frees. So a lot of them left this summer just gone, or this like now. But apart from that, I think it was a good first season under Errol Bullitt, and I'm quite looking forward to this season because I think we've bought really well. So.
Yeah, well, let's stick with that topic, Si. I mean, looking at your manager, he is, and I only read this today when I was doing some research ahead of this show today. It's been the first season since Warnock was last in charge in 2019, I think, where you've gone an entire season with one manager, which is quite a remarkable stat. I think most of us consider sides like Watford to be quite volatile when it comes to the managers. And I must admit, I hadn't realised just how many managerial changes you'd had in that short space of time. What is the fans' view of him, and how has he changed the fortunes of Cardiff, both coming into this season and obviously in his first season in charge?
I think overall the view is positive. I think like the vast majority, particularly of match-going fans, are very much behind him. They can see what he's trying to do. There is an element of people who don't like he plays very possession-based football, which last season, when we didn't have a striker all season, if you play possession-based football with no striker, it's very, very sideways, backwards. Yeah,
we know that feeling.
It can be mind-numbing, and look, there was some games last year where you felt like you were just going to fall asleep, but it was, like I said just then, it was about just stabilising things a little bit. And in fairness to the board, like they take a lot of criticism, and rightly so, over the years for a variety of decisions, including managerial ones. We still really don't know why Steve Morrison got sacked when he was doing quite well. We never got a reason for that. And obviously there's rebrands and things like this, which are all these weird decisions. But this summer, they've all of a sudden got themselves together. They've been really, really proactive, really organised, and they've brought in quality players in the positions that we needed, and they did it pretty quick as well. So as much as we moan about the board and we criticise them rightly, I think we should give them credit when they do the right things. And they back the manager. They can't be they probably need one or two more, but if they get those, which I think they will, he's then do his part as well.
Yeah, true. I think one of the things I was looking at this season, it was quite a funny season in that not many draws for you last year. You either won or lost. There was not any middle ground there, which is quite some achievement. What is he like in terms of system? Does he pick a system and stick with it? Is he quite adaptable? What's he like?
At the start of the season, I felt like I remember doing a show or a couple of shows, we were talking about like how tactically he was really quite flexible, not so much in terms of the system, but he would tweak certain personnel depending on the opponents and stuff like that. He does very occasionally switch to like a three at the back, which ironically we've just talked about now. We think he might switch to three at the back on Saturday, just because of obviously you're a very strong side. But he does tend to stick to the same system. He likes to pick the same 11 really, where possible, and kind of stick to it. He's not massively flexible.
I mean, that's quite common in the Championship as well, when squad sizes tend to be smaller, and you do get quite a lot of games. So you do have that. There's a lot to be said about picking the consistency of winning and the consistency of playing the same team, and it really happens. Interesting stuff. Is he? And I'd say this with a pinch of salt, because clearly, he's obviously doing very well. But is he under pressure this season to deliver a certain target at all? Is there a set of performances that might see him under pressure for losing his job, maybe?
So the general plan when he came in was there was almost like a 3-year sort of plan where it was like stabilise, second year, top half, and then the third year really push on. But I think he's ahead of schedule in terms of that, because I think he's expecting to be there or thereabouts for the playoffs this year. But saying that, we just talked about on the show just now, our start to the season is horrific.
Your fixtures are awful.
We had Sunderland, then we've got then we've got Middlesbrough, and then we've got Swansea. So we could effectively play quite well, but I still end up with no points after the first 4 games. And I think there's got to be patience and not panic. But as I mentioned, there is a small sort of element who are a bit frustrated by the style of football, which to me is like, I don't know, I'd rather see possession-based football than just lumping it up to a target man, like, you know, back in the 80s, 90s or whatever, and just long ball football. Like, I'd rather see proper football. But like, he's in the middle of building something. So in my opinion, even if we lose those first 4 or 5 games and we're sat at the bottom on 0 points, in my opinion, we should still be patient with him, because you've got to let him bed in the new players and build what he's building, because I think he is building.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a long old season as a champion as well. Things don't really start to fall until about February time, when things start to take shape. You can have an awful season up to then and just do a late charge and get into the playoffs, or even try and steal second place. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Dave, turning back to this fixture separately, let's bring you back in here. What have you chosen for our No One Never Remembers? You're picking a key match between Cardiff and Burnley at Turf Moor. What have you picked for this one?
I was looking back through, and quite often we do pick Burnley wins, but in this instance, it isn't a Burnley win. It's not a defeat either, but it was an eventful draw, let's say. We're going back to late season of 2007-8, so we're Saturday, 26th of April 2008, and the match that had goals galore. It finished 3-3, but it was perhaps more eventful for a particular event in the match rather than any of the goals. Can you recall any of what happened with that, or do we have a reminder from one of our panel?
We may very well do, but I'm going to turn over to Adam first, because Adam does remember this game. Adam, tell us why this is a key game.
Yeah, I remember being absolutely furious, even though it didn't have a direct impact on Burnley in the aftermath. But what I remember from a Burnley perspective being an awful challenge by Darren Pearce. He was always one of them players we encountered him over the years at Birmingham beforehand, and he was probably one of them players that if you had him in your starting line, if you had him in your team, you'd love him. Proper leader. But the fact when we were always playing against him, you thought he were horrible. And
Ashley Barnes.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, he's an angel, obviously. But yeah, awful tackle on Andy Cole, which infuriated Cole. Rightly got a red card, led to Cole charging down the tunnel at full time to find him. But infuriatingly, what I was most angry about was Cardiff had just made it to the FA Cup final against Portsmouth, and at the time the Welsh FA had like jurisdiction over appeals for red cards, and overturned the red card so that he could play in the FA Cup final.
Sorry, is that true?
Yes.
Do you remember this? Is this down in Welsh folklore?
So the main reason why I remember it is Darren Pearce is a really good friend of mine, and
give us the lowdown.
I quite often take the mick out of him, because it was a horrific challenge, but he didn't. I can't remember. Did he get a ban at all, or did they just completely overturn it?
They overturned it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he didn't play. He didn't actually play in the final. I think he was on the bench. And he didn't come on.
The bench. Yeah. No, but I mean, like, I always think it's weird that the Cardiff are under the Welsh FA anyway. Like, I understand we're Welsh, but we play in the English system, so we should be under the English FA, because then you do get.
Is it still the same now?
I think it changed fairly recently but I think the Welsh FA has definitely still got some level of jurisdiction over us. I'm not sure if it's quite as like back in 2007 or whatever it was. They had this final say on things like red cards and all the rest of it. But quite often, the thing that's most surprising about it to me is quite often they were the opposite way to us, and they would be overly harsh on us. So I think everyone at Cardiff was probably expecting with an appeal that it would get an extra game, but he actually got it overturned. So yeah, and in typical Cardiff fashion, we then didn't pick him for the FA Cup final,
that's brilliant. I don't remember the rescinding of the. I remember the incident. I just don't remember it being rescinded. That is brilliant. Sorry, go on, Adam.
Sorry, I was just going to say the other thing from that game that sticks out. Obviously, it was 16. Well, over 16 years ago, and yet Aaron Ramsey scored a goal in that game. Obviously, he might be playing at Turf Moor this weekend.
Yes.
So it's obviously start and end of his career. But I don't know whether he moved to Arsenal that summer or later on, but I know there were a lot of hype around him at the time.
Yeah.
He was only 16 at that point, 17 maybe. But
there's always been hype
so
on that
young.
guy. His entire career there's been hype around him. It must be bad pressure.
Do you know what though? Right, I say this all the time. If he hadn't, when he got his leg broken by Ryan Shawcross when he was playing for Arsenal, and if he hadn't have had that leg break, he would have gone on and been one of the most top 5 European midfielders. He's that good. But
was that against Stoke? Was that Shawcross?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Stoke. Yeah, but unfortunately, much like Luke Shaw, actually, ever since he had that leg break, he's always picked up every season. He'll pick up a couple of strains and just these kind of niggling injuries that keep you out for a month here and a month there. And I mean, obviously now these days he's not getting any younger, so those kind of things happen as well. But I really feel like he had a great career. He won things with Arsenal. He went and played for Juventus and all these. He played at top level, but he was so good that he would have gone on even higher, I think, if it weren't for that injury. And that was a horrible tackle as well.
Yeah. And he's battling injury to try and get fit for this weekend again as well. It just feels like he's been plagued with that his entire career now. It's such a shame.
Yeah, no, I think he'd be fit for Saturday. He played last week. He wasn't very good, but he played.
That's what we like to hear.
But he was rested in midweek for the EFL Cup game. And I think they just got to manage his games. We've got a really good young number 10 who can kind of come in for him as well. So
I agree.
Helpful.
Love it.
One last memory from that game, and I didn't know this until so it's not really a memory, but I looked at the game today, and Stephen Thompson got the last minute equaliser, which obviously went on to be a very good player for Burnley.
He did. Promotion winning. He was part of he was part of the very first squad that got us into the Premier League. I love it.
Big character as well.
Did he play the guitar afterwards? So when
he did on the bus, didn't he? I think I remember on the open top bus he was playing it down, and I think I remember that. Go on, Si. Sorry. I was
going to say when we got promoted, he was down. They had an open top bus down to Cardiff Bay, and he was on his guitar singing, and the rest of it with Kev and a few others. Yeah, he's a character, and he's someone actually I'm trying to get in contact with at the moment. So if he sees this, please get in contact with me.
Yes,
I've been trying to contact him for something.
It comes to Turf every now and again to watch games. So yes, Tomo, if you're watching, get yourself over to Si. He needs to see you. Public service done for the day. Well, Adam's not the only fan who remembers that key game against Cardiff. Regular panelist Tom also had a few things that he wanted to share about that game.
Hello, No Never listeners. Tom here. And we're talking today about the memory match. It's Burnley versus Cardiff on Saturday. I can remember a couple of title-winning encounters against Cardiff. Obviously, we lifted the trophy after beating them in the last home game of last time we were in the Championship. And I remember Cardiff coming to the turf, and I think it was a draw. David Edgar scored a late equaliser. Sorry. The thing that always sticks out in my mind about that game is it was the season they went up with Vincent Tan bankrolling. I mean, he changed the kit to red, and they'd like to think that they were always fervently against this change from the blue to the red kit. I remember a significant amount of red shirts in that away end. That's something that always sticks out for me about that game. But the one Dave selected, probably less memorable for what happened in a footballing sense. It was a 3-3 draw with Cardiff. An end of season game, not a lot on it for either side, I don't remember. I know Cardiff had the FA Cup final coming up, so they were probably thinking more about that. I remember young Aaron Ramsey scoring for Cardiff. It was before he'd really made his name as the sort of superstar that we know him as today. I don't remember a lot about our goals. What I remember is the red card for Darren Pearce. It was a collision with Andy Cole. Don't even remember much about that, if I'm honest. But what I do remember was Darren Pearce getting the red card. And then with the game not yet over, Andy Cole sprinting off the pitch and down the tunnel to go and confront him. I know it was an end-of-season game, but I think he probably took the end-of-season feel a little bit too far with that. He was obviously really annoyed, whatever had happened. That, and I also remember that so that Darren Pearce could play in the FA Cup final in those days, the Welsh FA still dealt with the disciplinary cases for Cardiff and Swansea. And they overturned his red card, despite the fact that it was about as clear of a red card as you'll ever see. And if I'm not wrong, I think that very much contributed to the Welsh FA no longer having jurisdiction over the Welsh teams that play in the English Pyramid. So a little bit of history made perhaps in that game. Not a massively memorable one in terms of what happened on the pitch, despite there being a lot of goals. But yes, and that Andy Cole sprint down the tunnel will go down in Turf Moor folklore. Let's hope we're talking more about the goals on the pitch than the incidents off it on Saturday. Up the Clarets.
Okay, Dave, hit us with some more stats, please, ahead of this fixture. What else have you got in your little box of delights?
Yeah, I've not got just 2 for you this time. I've got a 3. I've got a bonus stat as well, so I'll fire away those for
tease.
you. Between 2008 and 2016, the two teams played out 6 consecutive draws in the meetings at Turf Moor. We've mentioned one already, that one in 2008. And the next 5 matches at Turf Moor were also drawn. All of those 6 matches were in the Championship. Since then, Cardiff City have played at Burnley just twice, losing 2-0 in the Premier League, and they also lost 3-0 when they met us in the Championship. That was right at the end of the 2022-23 season. And a bonus stat, one of Cardiff City's summer signings, 21-year-old Scottish-born midfielder Alex Robertson, who arrived from Manchester City's youth setup, is a son of Aussie-born former Burnley player Mark Robertson, who was at Turf Moor from 1997 to 2000.
They are good stats. Adam, you've got a few questions you want to pose to Si, I believe, about this weekend's fixture in particular.
Yeah, I think just interested. Like, obviously, we've had a year away from the Championship, and I think it was more prominent when we'd had a few seasons away and came back. You realise how much you lose touch with other teams that you're playing. So not as much this time, but just wondered who we need to watch out for on Saturday, and just wondered if you expected any changes, given that you had a positive win against Bristol Rovers midweek. And from my point of view, looking at your side, the goalkeeper had a good spell at Luton when they got promoted. Horvath, Callum Chambers, Dave probably knows better than me, but he scored a few goals against us in the past when he were at Arsenal. And then obviously Ramsey, who we've already mentioned, Rawls, Willock, Robinson, all decent Championship level players. Is there anyone else that we need to be watching out for, or are you expecting any of the players that perform midweek to come in?
Callum Robertson's injured, so he's definitely not playing. I would expect Alex Robertson to start instead of Joe Rawls, because he played a good hour in midweek, and he's a quality player. Incidentally, he's not only related to that Burnley player you mentioned, he's also the nephew of former Cardiff City player Gavin Ray, so he's got a very football related family. But I'd expect him to start, and he is, by all accounts, and everyone I've spoken to, both in and out of the club, exceptional player, and got very high hopes for him. Ruben Colwell he changed the game, playing in the number 10 position on Tuesday. Young Welshman. He's not your stereotypical number 10 either. He's a big boy, but he's exceptionally skillful and very creative. But I'm not sure if he'll start on the bench. They do sometimes play him wide and give him a bit of freedom to wander. But, Aaron Ramsey, even at his age, he did really... In last season, we got some good results against big teams, tough teams, like yourselves, at the start of the season particularly. And Aaron played a big role in that, in the way we set up. Because the way Errol Bullock likes to set up, I think, suits playing away. He likes to sort of set up nice and solid, try and keep hold of the ball, and then hit teams in the transition. But for me, I hope Ruben Colwell plays, because I did notice against Luton, you guys obviously dominated the game. But I noticed that there was the one part where I thought Luton might be able to get at you was the little spaces in between the defence and the midfield, which is actually an area where we're quite strong, where we got Chris Willock. Chris Willock likes to go in there. Aaron Ramsey, Ruben Colwell, they all like to sort of drift into that little space. But unfortunately, we have not got any strikers fit. So we might end up with a youngster who played on Tuesday, and he only played about 20 minutes from the 23s, called Reindorf. He looked really exciting and looked the real deal, but it's a big ask to make his first team debut away at Burnley. But we don't really have any other options unless we play Mate up there, which that's painful to think about after last season. It was not good. But look, we got a few players who are not quite up to speed. Kanga, who is the striker we brought in, is not. He played about an hour, I think, but I think he got a knock. And then we've got El Ghazi, obviously absolute quality footballer, but he's, from what I understand, is nowhere near match fit. So it's going to be a while before we see him. But like Robertson and Colwell is where I pin my hopes. I got to be honest. They're the sort of two, and two very young players as well.
Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you about the expectations for the season, but I think we covered that when you spoke about the manager. So I just wondered, are there any Burnley players that who do you think are the biggest threats in the Burnley side to Cardiff?
Do I have to pin it down to one? Because I'm really not looking forward to Saturday's game in many ways.
I do love the Championship because we never get talked about in this way in the Premier League. It's so good being in this game.
But you know what, right? Do you know what it is? So I will answer the question. I'm not avoiding it. I promise. It's like what is so what I love about the Championship is against Sunderland, we were very good on the ball. We had 66% possession, and it was all very. But we never really looked like scoring. However, you can go and play dreadful 1 week in the Championship, and then the next week you could go and play top of the league or one of the teams which you fancied and end up winning 1-0. It's just it's very strange league, and I love it, and it's my favourite league. I almost don't want to get promoted sometimes because I think the Championship is just a bit. The Premier League is just a bit soulless.
We know that feeling, believe us.
In answer to your question, one, I think Scott Parker's a really, really good manager, and I thought it was a really astute appointment by you. Even though I really dislike him, for some reason he just rubs me up the wrong way. But I think he's a quality manager. In terms of players, I really, really like Cullen. Is it
Josh Cullen?
Cullen, yeah, I really like him. I think he's good. I'm interested to see Vitinho as well. I haven't really seen anything of him, but I heard that he was really, really good against Luton. I only saw a bit of the Luton game, or I was dipping in and out with it. Do you think Weghorst will play much football for you this year? Because I think he's much better than people give him credit for. I do.
He is. It's not his ability that Burnley fans have a problem with. It's the attitude. We've got a little bit of history with this one. We actually don't think he'll be with us. That's a hard question to answer right now because he's one of the. Listen, our squad is ridiculous. It's at 37 at the moment. We could lose an entire first team and still have too many players. So we need to offload, and Weghorst is one of those who probably will if he can get a move back to Europe. If he is still with us at the end of the transfer window, then why on earth wouldn't he play football? How you've got a player of that caliber in the Championship? Of course you play him. I don't know. Do you agree, Adam?
Yeah, I think he's been apparently pictured at Amsterdam Airport today.
Okay.
It's all Twitter rumour, so who knows? But yeah, absolutely agree with that. If he's our player in the 1st of September or whenever the window closes, then he's got to be a big part of our squad. He's clearly got the talent. But yeah, I completely agree. I can't imagine that he'll still be there. But it was nice to see him integrated with the team. And engaging with the fans at the weekend, and the group looked together, which obviously we haven't seen in a long time with what happened last season.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, let's finish off then the the preview of the weekend with some match overview. I think. What's our new? Do you know? I don't even know what our new. Dave, listeners, you will have realised this in last week's show. Dave's messed with all the features this season. He's given them all new branding and new names, and I can't find them on any of my scripts, and I don't know what the heck they're called. So,
it's
Dave,
it's there on the script.
I know, but that's on a different tab, and now I can't remember what tab that's on. So, Dave, give us some stats, match analysis stuff for coming up for the game, please.
Quick results overview is the catchy title you're looking for.
Catchy, rolls off your tongue. Thanks for that, Dave.
For all competitions, Burnley have won just over half of the previous 43 matches against Cardiff City at Turf Moor in all competitions, and the overall record stands at played 43, won 22, drawn 13. There have been a lot of draws, as we said, and Burnley have lost 8. So overall, in terms of goals scored, because we've tallied those up as well, Burnley have scored 76 goals and Cardiff have scored 48. So a good positive goal difference for the Clarets.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Well, that wraps up Statman Dave's stats for this week. Now, those of you who don't follow him on social media or haven't yet visited Dave's amazing website, he does have a site that is absolutely chock-a-block with Burnley stats and history and pretty much everything that you want to know. Dave, where do I, obviously we've put the QR code on the screen that you can scan, but Dave, for those that are not QR friendly, how do they visit your site? Please let us know. Let's take you off mute, Dave. We've only been doing this about 10 years.
There is a short link at the bottom of the screen, anyone watching on YouTube, but that's bit.ly/Burnley Stats QL, all in uppercase. And that will take you to a menu page, and there's all sorts on there in terms of past matches, past players, current players, internationals, shirts. Yeah, there's loads on there to go at. So explore away, and hope you have as much fun looking at it as I did compiling it all.
I doubt that very much, Dave. This is your baby, and we know how much you love it. So thank you, Dave, once again for your stats ahead of this week's game. It's always very much appreciated. Listeners, do go and follow Dave's site there, because I think it's very, very impressive. We're going to head over now to our regular cameo on the preview show, little George Poole, who is going to give us the referee details ahead of this fixture.
Now, on to this week's referee. So for the second week in a row, there will be a Northwest-based referee in the middle. And it says in my notes here that this man in employment is based in Preston. So that rules out Ryan Law. No, instead we've got Michael Salisbury, and this will just be the 4th Burnley match he has taken charge of. Although we won the first of those 3 games he's refereed to date, when we beat Sheffield United 2-0 at Turf Moor in April 2023, we were beaten on the 2 occasions he was referee last season. Now, both times we conceded 3 goals, which could be any number of games last season, let's be honest. One of those games was when we lost 3-1 at home to Aston Villa in the Premier League in August 2023, and then 3-0 away at Everton in the League Cup in November. There has just been 1 red card in those 3 previous encounters, and that was rightly shown to Sheffield United's keeper, Wes Foderingham, or as Paolo Canio once called him, Ligue 2 Wes, Ligue 2 Wes. His yellow card count stands at 5 to Burnley players and just 3 to our opponents.
Okay, finishing off, we're going to ask for a score prediction from all of you, please. We are going to head to our visitors first. We're going to remember our manners. Si, we would like a score prediction from you, please, for the game. And the caveat to this is that it's perfectly acceptable to back your boys. We will not be offended.
Can I ask you a question? When was the last time, Dave might be able to answer this, when was the last time Burnley didn't score a goal?
In the Championship?
So, yeah, or in a league game. In the Championship game.
Well, plenty of times last season. In the Championship, not so much about when we haven't scored, but we've only lost 3 of the last 70, if that's an impressive enough stat for you.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better, Si? Did you want to ask that question?
No, because the thing is, I think Cardiff defensively are going to be pretty solid this year. However, I'm not quite sure if we're there yet, and I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. So as much as I want to say a 1-0 smash and grab to Cardiff, I'll go with a sit on the fence 1-1, just because I can't go against my team. So
I completely agree. We respect you for that. We never do. Listen, we go on, in the Premier League, we go on City away previews and predict that Burnley are going to win. So listen, we share that.
Well,
Dave,
in that case, I change it to 1-0 Cardiff.
Excellent. Well done, sir. Well done. Dave, score prediction, please.
Well, 1-1's what I usually say when we're playing away from home, and I think we're going to lose. So I think Burnley are going to win, and I think it's going to be 2-0. 2-0 Burnley on Saturday.
Excellent. Adam?
I think it'll be a tight game. I think we all got carried away a couple of years ago after the performance at Huddersfield. And then the first home game, it were a really tough one against Luton. Don't think we quite realised how good a side Luton were going to be, and it finished 1 apiece. But hopefully we'll sneak it this time, and I'll say 2-1 with a Lyle Foster brace to get him off the mark.
Excellent. Well, I was going to say it was going to be a relatively close game as well. I do think it will. And nothing that Si's told me tonight has made me change my mind, other than I think I've been swayed by the fact that he's a bit concerned that they won't score. But he thinks that the defence is looking quite solid this year. So I think it's going to be a really tight game. I'm going to say 1-0 to Burnley. So that's what my prediction is. Listeners, you know the drill by now. We want to know your score predictions. Please drop us a line. Either comment on this video or drop us a line on our usual social media channels. Dave, you have talking wider afield now to finish off the preview show. I'm conscious of time, so we want to wrap this up relatively quickly. But we turn to the wider EFL. What have you picked for our talking point this week? What you want our opposition, our guest, to debate?
We're looking at looking back at the opening weekend, and certainly from our point of view, we thought. I certainly thought. I think perhaps the majority of Burnley fans do think this way, although obviously we'll get feedback from people who may think otherwise. We thought it was fantastic to watch football again without the interference of VAR on the opening weekend. And do we agree that the sport is better without it being micromanaged by extra officials somewhere away from the ground in a studio?
Absolutely, 100%. The Premier League is soulless, and I'm not entirely sure I want to be there again. But in the same way, like, the thing I like about the Championship the most is that it feels like football, which has still got a sporting integrity. So that, for me, is a big part of going to the football. And without VAR or VAR, whatever you want to call it, I think it's much, much preferable. However, there is a flip side to that, is that if there had been VAR when Cardiff were in the Premier League, I think it was the first time round, we wouldn't have got relegated, because the goal which relegated us was about 5 yards offside against Chelsea. So,
Salavi. Yeah, it is. Adam, did you do the same as me when you were watching the Luton game on Monday night? That I jumped, but tentatively jumped in all 4 of our goals, because I was just expecting the VAR review, because that's what we're used to now.
Yeah, it was just nice not to think about it, to be honest. You could just actually celebrate a goal and not have to worry about it. One thing I will say is that for the shockers that Si's talked about there, it could actually be a really good tool. And they've just completely, like you said, micromanaged it, overly messed with it. I think they've given some direction to higher the threshold this season. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because when you go to the international tournaments, you don't notice it as much. And even in like the European games, the whole movement to the semi-automated offside should be positive, rather than people drawing lines when they don't know where they're drawing them or where the ball's actually been played. It was just a big mess last season. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think they can improve it. But yeah, from, like you said, it was just really nice to watch a game of football and not have to worry about it for a change.
Do anybody, given just the what's at stake in the Championship, is anybody on our panel an advocate for bringing it down to the Championship, or is it a no from all of you? No, from Dave? No, yeah, no from everybody. Yeah, that's fine. Listeners, we'd be really keen to do this. If any of you are watching, do comment in the comment section below. Do you advocate bringing VAR into the Championship? And if so, why? I'd love to hear justification for bringing it down the levels, and we'll talk about that on a future podcast. So please drop your comments in the comment section, and we will debate that on another show. Finishing off then, Dave, I'm going to hand this over to Adam, because I answered the question last week. So Adam,
you won.
Then
Pressure's on.
It is, and there you go. This, I don't make it easy on this show, Adam. You can't just swan in having a week off and decide you're going to be fine. That's not how it works. Back to work, my friend. Dave, pitting off Adam against our lovely guest, Si. Give them their quiz question, please. A bit of fun to round off the preview show.
Right, well, I've actually got 2 quiz questions, so I'm going to give Si the choice here. We can either go for question A or question B.
I'll go with A for Ace Podcast Nation.
Oh,
okay.
So
branding.
I love it.
Question A then was, in which year did Cardiff City last win a match at Turf Moor? Again, we're after the year. If you get it spot on, it's 2 points. and whoever's the closest is 1 point, but it's say an extra point if you get the exact year.
Yeah.
Can
now,
I have question B?
now, Si, a quick rules with this one. Because you are our guest, we give you the option to guess first or second. You can force Adam to answer first. You can force None and Ever to answer first, or you can choose to answer first yourself. You get that as our guest.
And what I can tell you is I have no idea. So
okay.
Why
Make Adam guess
first. We'll have Adam guess first, and we'll go there.
I love gamesmanship. I love it. Adam, over to you. What is your guess, sir?
Well, I think I was listening earlier, and it was 16 games undefeated. And did you say they were all this century? I'm trying to think of what
you were listening. You were listening, Adam. Yeah. What is this? What is this wizardry? Come on.
Or back into the 80s, like you did last week. Because I don't know what leagues we were in then together, but I don't remember since I've been watching us Cardiff beating us at Turf Moor. So I was 1985.
Si, higher or lower? Where are you going to go?
I'm going to go higher because I vaguely think I remember one. Around the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe. But I might be misremembering it to like Ninian Park or something as well. So, yeah, I'll go higher.
Yeah, to give us a year because you might get some time.
Okay then. 90, 98, 99. Okay. Yeah,
Dave, the big reveal. 83 and 98.
It was 85, Adam said, wasn't it?
Yeah, 85, I said, yeah.
Oh, it's 85, sorry, 85.
It's quite close. The answer was 1988, so Adam was closest.
There we go. So sorry, Si. So close. But I like the thoughts. Well, that's a great little bit of fun. None and Ever, Team None Ever is currently 2-0 up in the quiz for our preview show. So when we come to future podcasts, hopefully some of our future opposition view will get some points on the board. Listeners, that is all we have time for this week. I want to extend my thanks, of course, to our normal panelists, to Dave and to Adam, but mainly to our guest, Si, from Cardiff C World. What an absolutely fantastic guest. Si, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your insight and best of luck for the rest of this season. Yeah, and you guys, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the invite and thank you for your hospitality. Of course, anytime. Listeners, do not forget before you finish off this channel to subscribe either via your podcast app or on YouTube and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of this season's fantastic preview shows. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the None and Ever podcast. Until next time. The None and Ever podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonenever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.